What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my favorite pick for each team throughout the entire 2021 NFL Draft. This is in my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments section. Not necessarily everyone's first round pick who's going to have the biggest impact, value is going to be weighed into it, but it's a myriad of different factors, and I'll talk about them as we go along. But down in the comment section, let me know who your favorite team is, what was your favorite pick they made, and as we go throughout this video, if you think I got one wrong, let me know down below. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Please hit the like button if you do, and if you're new to the channel, excited for more football and sports-based content, please consider subscribing. Also, for those who used to watch my Sim franchise rebuild series, that'll be coming early next week. And then also, I'm planning on starting a Road to the Show series on MLB The Show now that it's on Xbox. So that's pretty awesome. Comment down below any other series, any other video ideas you might have, whether it's draft, in real life, football-based, basketball, baseball is going on. I'm obviously a big baseball fan. Or if it's video game-related rebuild series, Road to the Shows, things of that nature. Comment down below what you'd be interested in seeing. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about my favorite pick for each team. For the Arizona Cardinals, to me, it's got to be Tay Gowan. I am a huge Tay Gowan fan. I will die on this hill, it feels like. Has the size, has the speed, and to get a guy who's going to compete for a starting role on that defense in the 6th round, you could say the same about Marco Wilson in the 4th, but nonetheless, I think Tay Gowan's fantastic value, and I seriously think he carves out a decently sized role as a rookie, and it gets bigger and bigger from there on out. I think he is one of the biggest sleepers in this entire draft. Like Zaven Collins, I think Rondale Moore has a good role already cut for him, but Tay Gowan, definitely my favorite pick the Cardinals made. On to the Atlanta Falcons, a little bit bigger of a draft class. Favorite pick, I'm kind of intrigued by Jalen Mayfield and what they might do with him, but we're talking about an offensive lineman. Him going from tackle to guard is intriguing, but I'll go with Richie Grant here. It's also interesting considering they took Grant over a guy like Trevon Merrick. So Merrick, a lot of people safety one. Grant, a guy who can play free and strong, however. So has some versatility. This is a team that's down a couple of starting safeties from last year. So definitely a big position of need. It's easy to say Kyle Pitts here too, just because he's something we've never seen before as a tight end, just a dynamic pass catcher in general. But I'll go with Richie Grant here for Atlanta. On to the Baltimore Ravens. Favorite pick? I'll go with Odafe Oweh. I love to think about what his potential is, and now that he's found the perfect organization that develops edge rushers better than anybody in the league, it's a match made in heaven. Really considered Tylan Wallace here. If he was taken by the Packers at 29, I would have been like, yeah, it's a little early. Kind of similar to what we'll talk about with another wide receiver a little bit later on in this video. But at the same time, I would understand why the Packers did it, and I would probably give it a B- or better if I were to grade that move individually. I'm a big Tylan Wallace fan. Oklahoma State did not use him to his fullest potential, and I feel like Baltimore, him, as well as Rashad Bateman, two very different wide receivers, but two big additions. Hollywood Brown can be your field stretcher, kind of a gadget guy. You also have Devin Duvernay for that role. And Sammy Watkins ultimately on a one-year deal, so that's nothing long-term. Also, Dalen Hayes, honorable mention, as well as Shaun Wade. If he plays the nickel role with Peters and Humphrey on the outside, that's intriguing. But I would lock into Oweh here for the Ravens. To the Buffalo Bills, I'm actually going to go Carlos Basham, right? They had a couple of really interesting picks. Spencer Brown, really nice developmental tackle. He looks like a guy who could become a Pro Bowl tackle one day, has the size, strength, all those boxes you want to check. Gregor Rousseau, a lot of the same could be said just as a defensive end. Also a guy who maybe they kick inside, but Carlos Basham, I think, has a more immediate impact. Good size, good frame, fits a 4.3 to a T. So while they have Epineza and Rousseau as the project pass rushers, they can have Boogie Basham as a more of an immediate guy, making an impact on that front four rush. Also, it's just a position they're kind of old at, so it's a position you want to be deep at. So as Addison and Jerry Hughes are getting older, they have a nice rotation in the mix and in the making there in Buffalo. On to Carolina. I'm going to go with Brady Christensen. I feel like everybody, if they were to say, what's your favorite pick, Davion Nixon makes a ton of sense. Like, Nixon's a stud. You put him next to Derek Brown. Come on. Nixon can be a good run defender, but his strength is as a pass rusher. You put him next to Derek Brown, it's a match made in heaven. But I'm intrigued by what Brady Christensen could become, right? has the size, kind of similar to what we talked about Spencer Brown, but he has the tape to back it up. Like, he dominates fools. A lot of that's because at BYU didn't play top-level competition, and even when he played some competition that was better than the rest, it wasn't spectacular. But I like a lot of what Brady Christensen can become. And this is a team that clearly isn't sold on Greg Little. So Christensen, long-term, could be the blindside protector of the future for this team, whether it's for Sam Darnold or someone else moving forward. Terrence Marshall's also a really, really nice fit into that offense. He can play inside, he can play out. So if you want to move DJ Moore to the slot, you can play Marshall on the outside, or if they want to keep Terrence Marshall Jr. in that slot role, he totally can. J.C. Horn signals a culture change. I think this team wants to run a lot more man press. That's what elite level teams do on those big third downs late in the game. They want to get their corners, get their hands on wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. Horn definitely fits that. So Davion Nixon, Brady Christensen, pick between the two. I'll go Christensen just to say something a little different than what you probably heard everyone else say. For the Chicago Bears, so it's easy to say Justin Fields, right? We've been saying for years they're a QB away. He has the arm strength, fantastic downfield accuracy, runs a 4.4. I mean, there's so much to like about Justin Fields. Sure, maybe needs to become a quicker processor, but making that leap from college to the NFL, I'd say that's something that every quarterback needs to get better at, outside of the likes of like a Trevor Lawrence, who we've been talking about for years now as NFL ready. That's just an adjustment every college quarterback's going to have to make. I like what Fields can do. It comes down to Matt Nagy now. They got to create a game plan. They failed Mitch Trubisky, and I think Fields is way better than Mitch Trubisky, might I add. But nonetheless, this comes down to Matt Nagy having a plan as his head coach and as an offensive guru. He was hired from that Andy Reid tree out of Kansas City to be an offensive guru, make it work for Mitch Trubisky. Now he's got some newfound life, some NFL, pun intended, to try to get things corrected with Justin Fields. So it comes down to Matt Nagy. So because of that, Justin Fields is an easy pick. But I'll go Thomas Graham, man. I really like Thomas Graham. There's just nothing flashy about him. He's almost in a lot of ways. So like some people, and I may even made the comp myself, Josh Palmer was like a poor man's Jamar Chase. Other side of the football, it feels like Thomas Graham Jr. is a poor man's Patrick Surtain, where he can fit into a lot of different schemes. Not superb when it comes to his athletic numbers, but he just does a lot of things really well. And here in the 6th round, for a team that got rid of Kyle Fuller, Thomas Graham might immediately be able to step into a starting role opposite of Jalen Johnson, who was pretty damn good last year as a rookie. So, big fan of this pick here in the 6th. Kyrus Tonga, not a bad one either. Khalil Herbert, some value there. But it's easy to say Justin Fields, but for the sake, same thing I said with Carolina, of saying something different, I'll go with Thomas Graham Jr. On to the Cincinnati Bengals. I think my favorite pick here is Deontay Smith. Either him, Cam Sample, or Chris Evans. Like, Jamar Chase, we all know is going to be a slam dunk pick. I think there were some better offensive linemen available over Jackson Carman, but nonetheless, I think they're going to kick him inside to guard, and he has a good role there. Joseph Osai, if he's playing linebacker, I'd prefer him at like a 4-3 will than a 4-3 D end. And if they use him in a blitzing role, I think Osai has a lot of potential as a blitz-heavy, off-ball linebacker. Is super athletic, knows how to play in open space, can cover everything of the like. But I'm going to go Deontay Smith. I like Cameron Sample as well. Super explosive guy. Just needs to get a few more reps. And he has an opportunity to sit behind Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson to refine his skills. Deontay Smith is a guy who's similar to what we talked about earlier with some of these players where they have the making of a high-level player at that position. Kind of like what we talked about with Spencer Brown. He has the size. He has the strength. Maybe you could even say he has some of the production. He just needs to become more refined and polished. And he's stepping into a spot where if Carman's playing guard, I think Smith, for an entire year, gets to sit behind the likes of Jonah Williams and Riley Reif and just learn to get better. And then next year, I think Deontay Smith becomes the starting right tackle. Instead of having to pay Riley Reif, they can use that money elsewhere. They're planning for the future. They're seeing a guy who, hey, in a year's time, that guy is somebody we can lean on and have as a starter. Also really like Chris Evans. The reason I decided to go Smith is he has a long-term starting role in my eyes. Chris Evans is just a Gio Bernard replacement, and a darn good one at that. So that's not to be knocked. Cam Sample right now is an rotational edge guy. Because Smith has a pathway to becoming a starter, I'll say he's my favorite pick that the Bengals made. And they got him in a really good spot as well. The Cleveland Browns, I could point to a myriad of picks. Demetric Felton the 6th. Come on. Kevin Stefanski's a great play caller. You give him a gadget like Felton, that's fun. Anthony Schwartz, straight speed. Ton of Browns fans were in my comment section saying we need a speedy wide receiver. We need someone who's just got the burners. Anthony Schwartz is your dude. James Hudson, kind of like what we talked about with Deontay Smith and Spencer Brown for the Bills and the Bengals for Smith. Hudson's in a spot where he can sit back, learn, get better as an offensive lineman in general, and then has a starting role long-term to replace Jack Conklin. At least that's how I'm projecting this pick to eventually play out. Got him in a good spot in the 4th round. Stellar athlete. I think he'd be fantastic at right tackle. And then you can eventually move on from Conklin, save money, put that money elsewhere. You're going to have to pay Baker Mayfield soon. But I'm tripping if I'm saying anything other than Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Had a heart condition pop up right before the draft. Doctors have cleared it. But that is still obviously a concern. You know, like the heart is rather vital for all of our existence. So totally get why he fell. Additionally, he's really only somebody who fits in a 4-3. So you're shrinking the teams down in half. And then you have to have 4-3 teams who have a carved out role for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and the myriad of things he can do. They need somebody who can be an overhang defender, slot guy, and some teams might already think we already have an answer for that in that type of role. I'd rather address my 1st round pick elsewhere. So because of that, you're already taking the league halfway down because of the scheme, and then you're narrowing it down even more based off of needs, specifically in the 1st round. But Cleveland moves up, takes a guy who fits them perfectly. This guy could not have found a better spot for him to immediately make an impact on that defense that is continuously getting better and better and better with the additions of Greg Newsome, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the signing of Jadeveon Clowney. The list goes on and on. The additions of John Johnson, Troy Hill, literally goes on and on and on. But joke, definitely the best pick the Browns made. On to the Dallas Cowboys. This is a tough one just given I love this Micah Parsons pick, but what are they going to do with the linebackers they already have? They didn't pick up the option for Leighton Vander Esch. I think Parsons is probably just a better LVE. And then also Jabril Cox is just tremendous value, and it feels like he could be a Jalen Smith replacement. Can they trade Smith? That's yet to be seen. He's making a lot of money for a guy who was not great last year. Solid 2 years ago. Pretty darn good 2 years ago, but not so much last year. And there's also some decent value picks down here. But I'll go with Parsons, right? Like, a lot of people had it, including myself, number 1 defensive player in the draft. They get him at 12. They even traded down and pick up a 3rd round pick. And it comes down to one of those situations where I think they wanted corner really bad. But since they didn't get that position in need, they didn't freak out. They didn't say, let's take a shot on Caleb Farley at 12, way higher than anybody else was thinking. Or they didn't take Greg Newsome 14 picks ahead. Could they have traded down more and gotten one of those guys? Absolutely. But in their mind, they took a trade, got an extra 3rd round pick, which became more value. Granted, I'm not crazy about what they used these 3rd round picks on, but that's not what we're arguing here. They did get value. They got another body out of this, and then they went best player available, which is an approach I'm always going to be behind. Micah Parsons is a guy who can just do it all. He's going to be a fantastic blitzer. It's going to help that pass rush in that regard. I think he already has good coverage skills, going to continue to get better. Freak athlete, stops the run, which is where this team needs to get better. And if he's an LVE replacement, at the minimum, you're saving money by not having to pay LVE long term and getting, in my opinion, a better football player in Micah Parsons. So I'll go with Parsons for the best pick for Dallas. For the Denver Broncos, this is another challenging one because I'm not crazy about the Pat Surtain pick unless it's being used as a trade piece to get Aaron Rodgers, just because it's a crowded corner room, and I felt like they could have used Parsons, or they should take the shot on Justin Fields. Felt like they just put another body into a room that's already full, as opposed to addressing areas of need. I know you can never have too many corners, but what good is it going to do you if you don't have a competent quarterback? Now, if they're going out there and getting Rodgers and Surtain's a part of that, by all means, this was probably the best move they could have made, him or Parsons, which I also think Parsons would have been a tremendous scheme fit in Denver. But my favorite pick, I'm going to go Baron Browning, man. I've been high on him throughout the entire process. Freak athlete, has a lot of coverage skills, so you feel comfortable with him playing off the ball in that 3-4. And it's a team that is looking for answers beyond Von Miller. They have some guys who are, young potential replacements. But I think Baron Browning, just throughout his entire rookie year, I don't care if he doesn't see the field, if he just becomes refined as a pass rusher. Some of his best reps at Ohio State are as a pass rusher, and you see that. And you watch that on tape, you'll see it in highlights, obviously. He does have a lot of good reps rushing the passer against tackles. And now I think if he learns from Von Miller for an entire year, and just works with also Vic Fangio, who's done a very high-level defensive coach, I think the sky's the limit given his athletic upside and his comfortability playing in open space. I think this is the long-term answer opposite of Bradley Chubb for Denver's defense. On to the Detroit Lions, one of my biggest winners of this draft class. And this is still a team that's probably picking top 3 next year, but all these selections are ones that help build the foundation, right? Like a starting right tackle is, when it comes to adjusted win total, not as valuable as a quarterback or maybe an elite wide receiver. Levi Onwuzurike, Alim McNeill. I'm a huge Alim McNeill fan. Almost took Alim McNeill with this. He's my honorable mention in this spot. But 2 interior guys who complement each other perfectly. I think McNeill has better pass rush upside at the NFL, where there's going to be more 4-man rushes. If you're familiar with my channel, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. But nonetheless, him and Onwuzurike, fantastic pairing. I'm on Ron St. Brown in the 4th round. That is absolutely a steal. Everybody's saying, why Detroit isn't going to get a wide receiver? They're not helping Jared Goff. Well, it's because you can wait and get a guy who is almost as good as the guys going in the 2nd round, 2 rounds later, and then also get foundation starting pieces as you are making this rebuild. I'm on Ron St. Brown. Also, it's inside-out versatility, so I think he plays in the slot this year with Perriman and Williams on the outside. But then long-term, given his versatility, you're not tied down to either one of those other guys. So if you have a slot wide receiver who follows you in the 2nd round, like an Elijah Moore, next year's class, or something like that, you're not tied down saying, all right, we already have a slot guy, I got to pass on him, got to go somewhere else. You can say, let's take this electric slot, field stretching option, whoever it is, and we'll move Amon-Ra St. Brown to the outside. So I'm all about the Amon-Ra St. Brown pick. Say that 10 times fast. But Ifeatu Melifonwu has got to be my pick here for Detroit. And I think a big part of it is the Lions' new defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. He was the defensive backs coach in New Orleans. So think about what not saying he was the end-all, be-all factor, but Marshawn Lattimore is a top-level corner, partially due to Glenn. Janoris Jenkins had a bit of a resurgence in New Orleans, kind of bottomed out, now picked back up while he was with the Saints. Got to give credit to Glenn. Same thing about Eli Apple. Then you look at the safeties. Marcus Williams, he's prolonged the career of someone like Malcolm Jenkins as well. I think what Aaron Glenn has done with that secondary, again, I'm not giving him all the credit because those are just good football players as well. Nonetheless, Aaron Glenn had a part in that, and now he's going to Detroit. He's a defensive coordinator. He's overseeing the entire defense, but he's paying close attention to a guy like Ifeatu Melifonwu, Jeff Okudah, who was taken in the top 5 last year. Also have Amani Uruwariye. A couple of good young safeties in Tracy Walker and Will Harris. I think he's going to be very active in coaching up that secondary. And if that's the case, with these 2 guys, Romeo Okwara, hopefully a bounce-back year for Flowers, this is a defense that could be significantly improved. Not necessarily great, but significantly improved where they were last year. Ifeatu Melifonwu has the size, he has the speed, his brother plays in the NFL. It just comes down to, it feels like sometimes he's overly cautious about being beat deep, so he overcompensates and he'll give up some stuff shallow. And some of that's just a feel for the game, and I think Aaron Glenn is going to come in big time and coach this guy up who already has the traits. So I think in a few years' time, we'll look back at this and say, what a steal in the 3rd round for Detroit. Sticking in the NFC North, the team that's going through a lot right now. Favorite pick, I'll go Amari Rodgers, right? Kylan Hill's fantastic value, but we're talking about a potential running back 3. This is an offense that will use 3 running backs. We saw A.J. Dillon get in the mix last year when he was RB3. But Amari Rodgers, not necessarily great value, given that he was probably about a 3rd-round guy across the board for everybody. But he's just somebody they don't have, that slot wide receiver, really twitchy. You can engineer plays for him, end-arounds, jet sweeps, all those things that we talk about in the modern NFL that, basically what Andy Reid has done with Tyreek Hill, and then everyone else was like, oh yeah, let's do that as well. Sean McVay did it as well. But these gadget wide receivers who also operate really well to the slot, Amari Rodgers, coming from Clemson, worked with high-level quarterback play with Trevor Lawrence, and then at least as of now, it's Aaron Rodgers under center, but even not, I think it's an additional weapon. And even I'd even argue, if it's not Aaron Rodgers, this becomes even more of a pick because the slot wide receiver who can help make the game easier for Jordan Love, who I am a fan of, but I will tell you he is not as good as Aaron Rodgers and may not ever be as good as Aaron Rodgers, though I do like Jordan Love's potential. Amari Rodgers got to be my pick here for Green Bay. On to the Houston Texans. I'm going to go with Nico Collins here. Davis Mills is kind of interesting because this is a team that, if I'm putting money on it now, and by the way, later this week you're going to see my way too early 2022 mock draft, and this is going to be a team near the top looking at quarterback. So is Mills your long-term guy, or is he somebody that you took this year, maybe gets on the field and you can flip him for a second next year? I'm just not entirely sure. But Mills signals that the end of the Deshaun Watson era in Houston has come. And there is upside, right? Like, highly touted recruit, got a lot of buzz late in the cycle, impressed a lot of coaches and scouts. And there's got to be a reason for that. Very small, sample size from his time at Stanford. So you think more reps, he'll keep getting better, and we'll see what, he could have been coming out of high school and going to Stanford. But I really like Nico Collins, a guy who did show progression, was on the field, and got better year by year, week by week at Michigan. And right now, he's just a wide receiver that this team doesn't have, that big body frame. I think he's a really nice complement, opposite of Brandon Cooks. But he's also a guy with a good amount of speed. So don't think of him as the slow, big body guy. I think he's got a mix of both worlds, and he has the future to be this team's wide receiver moving forward. Third round, probably about right. I think I've seen some people saying that's a little early, but I like the potential with what Collins could be. Next up is the Indianapolis Colts, and this one's got to be Kwity Paye. This is another first-round pick to me, just like I said with the Cowboys and Micah Parsons. This just addresses a need, and this is a team that badly needed edge rush. So the fact Paye fell to him, Colts fans were probably hoping it was Jalen Phillips, but Kwity Paye is an awesome consolation prize. Freak athlete. Just like Nico Collins, also Michigan Wolverines, showed progression year by year, got better over time. Got to think that curve is still on its way up. Chris Ballard, fantastic GM. This is also a great coaching staff that Kwity Paye is, going to be working with. All about this pick here in the first round. I think they were snaked on Dylan Radunz in the second round, so they decided to go back to edge. And Odeyingbo, if he comes back from the injury, has the athletic profile to be a starting defensive end. So that could be one that we look back on as a positive. Sean Davis, good safety. Not exactly sure what his role is. Is he the Malik Hooker replacement? If he is, this could be a value pick in the 6th. And then Sam Ehlinger, your QB sneak guy, if they want to continue to do that like they did with Brissett last year. But Kwity Paye is my pick for the Colts. For the Jags, I said this in my last video, and I thought I'd get a little bit more blowback, but I did not care for a lot of the picks that Urban Meyer made after Trevor Lawrence. Like, that pick was made for him. We knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be the number 1 pick. ETN felt early. Tyson Campbell, again, feels like another corner into a crowded room. I like Walker Little. I am high on him. I see the upside, but I'm not going to tell you he comes free of risk. Like, he obviously has battled a ton of injuries. Andre Sisco is a high variance player. He makes insanely good, incredible plays. Like, and if you're just watching his highlights, it's like, dude, this guy's a top 15 player in the draft. But then when you actually watch him and you see some of the boneheaded mistakes, the bad angles to ball carries, but also passes in the air, those are things that coaches will have a short patience for. Some people have made the argument it got a little bit better in the 2 games he played last college football season. I think that's too small of a sample size. That could just be a good 2-game stretch. Football players go through those. But the verdict is still out. But he also paid Rayshawn Jenkins, so what are they doing with Sisco versus Jenkins? Can they move on from that contract? I don't have it in front of me. But nonetheless, my pick here is Jordan Smith. And if he's going to play 3-4 D end, I think that really might fit. I was worried when he was first taken that he's going to be stuck sitting behind Kayvon Chason, who I think is going to be due for a huge second year, and then Josh Allen. So he's just a rotational guy at best, when this guy has the frame, the strength, the size, great production at a small school, but good production at that. And I was all about it, but this feels like one of the spots where he would just become a rotational guy at best. If they're playing him at defensive end like it has here on ESPN, I'm not entirely sure. Feels like he might need to put on some weight at 264. But that's something that's obtainable, and I just like what Smith could become. And maybe if Kayvon Chason doesn't take the leap forward that I think he will in that new 3-4 defense, maybe Jordan Smith is a competent replacement and a guy that basically just splits the load with Chason. But I like what Smith could become, and good value here in the 4th round. Honorable mention to Jay Tufele. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. And nothing different here. I got to go Trey Smith. I know the heart clot, or the blood clot right around his heart, is definitely a big concern. But this is a guy who I had clustered with the likes of Wyatt Davis, Aaron Banks, Kendrick Green, all these guys who were like, I could see him going 2nd to 3rd, anywhere in there. And then he falls all the way to the 6th. For a team that is revamping the offensive line, this is a guy who legitimately could start week 1. Given that he's healthy, he's a starter week 1, more than likely. Cornell Powell, a guy I think he contributes right away. Creed Humphrey, interested to see what they're going to do with Austin Blythe now that they have Creed Humphrey. I'm pretty sure they're keeping Humphrey at center. He might just sit a year, which is fine. And Nick Bolton is a fun linebacker. Him and Willie Gay Jr. are both really solid young pieces in that linebacking core for Kansas City. But I got to go Trey Smith here. Sorry to stick to the norm there. For the LA Chargers, Rashawn Slater makes a ton of sense here, as does Asante Samuel and Josh Palmer. I also like Chris Rumph, Brendan Hames. I think both these guys have roles eventually. Rumph needs to get bigger. James is going to be a utility piece, maybe potential right tackle of the future. But Asante Samuel Jr. is a fantastic scheme fit. You've heard it probably said 1,000 times by 1,000 different people. This was a match made in heaven in that Brandon Staley, lots of cover for. Asante Samuel Jr. is going to keep his eyes in the backfield, reading quarterbacks, and that's what he does best. He's not a phenomenal athlete. He's a good athlete, but he's not phenomenal. He's not a Caleb Farley. He doesn't have that size either. He's just somebody who knows the game of football at a high level, just like his dad. He's in the film room. He knows what other teams are trying to do. And that stands out as something that's just really respectable in his game. So I'm all about it here in the second round. I would have loved the Steelers to take him at 24. That's how high I think of Asante Samuel Jr., and then instead the Chargers get him midway through the second round. Fantastic value, though. Honorable mention to Slater, Palmer, and a lot of the other Chargers draft picks, because I think they did really, really well for themselves. On the other side of the coin, though, the LA Rams. This is the draft class I wasn't crazy about, but this is easily Robert Rochelle for me. Athletic freak, wide receiver turned corner, and some of the big plays he makes, you can tell he makes them because he is a former wide receiver. And you always hear about even Caleb Farley, right? Quarterback turned wide receiver turned corner. That is a not so abnormal pathway, wide receiver to corner for CBs to take. Robert Rochelle has the athletic makeup of maybe nobody else in this draft class. He might be the biggest freak when it comes to what he can do and how he tested. But he needs to learn to play the position better. And you put him in a room with Darius Williams, who had a great year last year. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey, maybe the best corner in football. I like his chances of becoming a more refined cornerback. And then that with his athletic mold, dude, that guy could be a freak in a few years' time. Las Vegas Raiders, without a doubt, it's Trevon Moehrig. I mean, everybody's saying if you switch these two picks, it's not so bad, but it's not that easy. It's not how it works. It's more about how you evaluate these guys. And if they took somebody else here in the first, odds are they could have traded up and still gotten Moehrig in the second. Not always a guarantee, but this guy fell to the second round. So, there's no saying you couldn't have gotten a better value here in the first and then still gotten Moehrig. Regardless, Moehrig's definitely the pick here. My top safety in the class, though, I think it was closer between him and Javon Holland than a lot of people wanted to make it out to be. But this guy can do it all. This team needs safety help bad. I think in that cover 3 defense, Moehrig's going to play a lot more free. Though I will say he is great in the box, and he can guard the nickel. Realistically, if Gus Bradley moves this guy around, that's the best case scenario for this team. And it's also interesting, it looks like they're kind of giving up on Jonathan Abrams because Divine Diablo is basically the same player, this safety who's been told he's going to transition to linebacker. Tyree Gillespie is a center field safety, I think is how they're going to use him. So that also makes me interested because if Gillespie's the center fielder, where are you using Moehrig? Is he going to be in the box? Is he going to be a nickel guy? Are you going to be able to adequately rotate him around the field? Time will tell. Gus Bradley is, a defensive coordinator at the NFL for a reason, and he's had a ton of success, accumulated a lot of money in his career as well. So you got to think that he's a smart guy. He'll figure it out. Raiders fans are certainly hoping that's the case. Moehrig, definitely my pick for the Las Vegas Raiders, LV Raiders, I should say. Then for the Miami Dolphins, I really wanted to go Javon Holland, but I realized that's probably a little early compared to most people, and a lot of people wanted that to be Moehrig. I'm a huge Javon Holland fan. I think him playing deep free safety adds a nice skill to that defense that wasn't missing a whole lot. Liam Eichenberg has a good role, but I'm going to go with Jalen Phillips. Both the Jalen's up here at the top of the board, and then Javon are solid picks. Waddle fits that offense perfectly. Need a slot guy, another field stretcher. You give him the ball short, let him do things in space, make the game easy for Tua, but also have another field stretching option. They also have chemistry together. But Jalen Phillips, again, this team wasn't missing much on the defensive side. A safety, Holland helps there, and then needed an edge rusher. And they got the best one in the class to me in Jalen Phillips. I think he'll fit well into that 3-4, plus working with Brian Flores. You feel great about what he could become. Keep in mind, at UCLA, that was the only year he played an entire season's worth of football. There's still a lot of growth for this young man to make, and he's already edge one in my eyes in this class. So that's fantastic news if you're a Dolphins fan. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings. Man, I love this draft class. Honorable mentions Janarius Robinson, I think is a tremendous fit at 4-3 end. I think as early as his rookie year, tail end of his rookie year, he could have a huge impact. But I'm going to cheat a little bit here and go with Christian Darrisaw, partially because of the trade, right? Like if they took Darrisaw at 14, I'd be like, that's a great pick. That's exactly what they needed. But they traded back, read the room properly. Rich Spielman did a fantastic job and garnered 2 extra third-round picks, which become potential QB of the future in Kellen Mond, who I think needs to sit for 2 years, try to refine his passing ability and learn from Kirk Cousins, who's as accurate as it gets. And then the other becomes Wyatt Davis, day one starting left guard. So by trading back, they still get Darrisaw at 23. They also get his starter at guard right next to him, and they get a QB of the future. So Darrisaw is my pick, but ultimately the trade and its results are the winner for the Vikings, because Darrisaw being, waiting to get him at 23 then becomes Mond and Davis added on to that. I mean, jeez. And I'm a huge Chaz Surratt fan too. Patrick Jones has a role. Dude, even Jalen Twyman in the 6th round is great value. Like this draft, just top to bottom, is fantastic for the Vikings. On to the New England Patriots. I got to go Christian Barmore here. They trade up and get a guy who should have been a first-round pick. Apparently, it was character concerns that caused him to slide. Really, it was like the Alabama routine and regiment that kept him in line. And some teams were concerned that since he's leaving Alabama, would he, be self-motivated when, everything is on your own? Like, you got to make sure you're up on time to a meeting, you're taking care of yourself, you're feeding yourself, getting yourself food, eating right, all those things that, is a part of the process from going from college to just real life. Anybody who has ever done that understands, even high school to real life. It's not just football players, it's everybody. But Barmore here is just tremendous value as a player. And if there's anybody who's going to be able to replicate that Alabama Nick Saban regiment and routine, I feel pretty confident Bill Belichick's your guy. So I think ultimately this is a fantastic fit for Christian Barmore, and the best place that could eventually both get the most out of his talent, but most out of him as a person in general. No, I will say it was interesting. Report came out. If Elijah Vera Tucker was on the board at 15, that was who the Pats were going to take over Mac Jones. So any Pats fans, comment away what you think of that, because that was a spicy rumor that I heard, and I don't know how to feel about it. For the Saints, this is a pretty easy one. Paulson Adebo needed a corner. They got a pretty good one here in the 3rd. I think he can play, fit well into that Saints defense, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. Really instinctual. And when it comes to being a playmaker, him and Asante Samuel Jr. just have that ability to go jump routes, read the quarterback, have a nose for the football. So Paulson Adebo, really good value here. Additionally, Peyton Turner felt a little early. Maybe Pete Warner was. But I think both these picks are fine. Like C-level grades. Like I know what they're getting at, and this is a big position to need. So Warner, maybe a C+. Feels like they could have waited on Turner though. But Adebo, they got good value for him. So that is easily my pick for New Orleans. Getting down towards the end, the New York Football Giants. Azeez Ojulari makes a ton of sense here, and I think he's got to be the pick. Again, it comes down to his health. Kind of like what we talked about with Trey Smith and a few others, where it's just like, if he's healthy, dude's a freak. And this is a perfect scheme fit in that 3-4 attacking Giants defense. He can play in space, has production at that outside linebacking role. And if you can get a full 17 out of him with Leonard Williams, with Dexter Lawrence, that pass rush is going to be crazy. And they have a great secondary. Don't forget about that. And they only added to it. Aaron Robinson would probably be my honorable mention. Love what he could be at the bare minimum as a shutdown slot guy, but I think he might be able to play on the outside. We'll see. The verdict's still out. That's on Joe Judge and his coaching staff now to figure that out, but minimum, fantastic nickel guy to play in between Adoree Jackson and James Bradbury, who was awesome last year. And when Adoree Jackson's playing, he's pretty darn good as well. Kadarius Toney, a great pick too, and you know I'm a huge Kadarius Toney fan if you've been around the channel. But Azeez Ojulari, fantastic value. A bit of a gamble, but a gamble worth taking if you're the Giants. On to the other team that's based out of New York, the Jets. And a lot of really good picks here. I feel like everybody would say Elijah Moore just because, first-round caliber receiver. It felt like though it was going to be him or Toney. One of the two was going to make it into the second round. And, in our world, it was Elijah Moore. fantastic pick at the top of round 2. I wouldn't even necessarily, this was the biggest need. I think they would have gone Azeez Ojulari if it wasn't for Elijah Moore, or just edge in general, pass rusher. They could still get better, or corner. Keep in mind, maybe this is a team that was looking at Asante Samuel Jr., and they still need corner. I think their number one guy right now is Bryce Hall. Maybe the phone's ringing for Richard Sherman are a little bit more consistent, especially now that Casey Hayward, as of the day I'm recording this, just signed with the Raiders. So that's one more veteran corner off the market. So maybe Robert Saleh is trying to hit up Richard Sherman and getting him out to the East Coast, though I've heard he prefers to play on the West Coast. Neither here nor there. Elijah Moore's a great pick, but I love Michael Carter and this offense that is going to be very 49ers-like, that zone run, one-cut dimension of Michael Carter. He might have the quickest and most explosive one-cut of any running back in this draft, which says a lot, like over the likes of Travis Etienne, Kyle Hill, plenty of others. I love Michael Carter for this team. I think he actually, by the end of the year, might be the bell cow running back. Him, and you also have Michael P. Ryan, as well as Tevin Coleman. Coleman, I think, could have a big role, but it's one of those things where it's like, until he can play, not even a full season, until he can play 75% of the games in a season, I'm just not banking on him being a major contributor down the stretch for any given team. Next up's the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a ton of great picks throughout this draft class. Marlon Tuipulotu, great value in the 6th. Kenneth Gainwell, fantastic pass-catching running back in the 5th. I even like Zach McPherson, Teron Jackson, most productive edge rusher out of one of the better defenses in college football at Coastal Carolina. I love Milton Williams. I think he's a fantastic fit, especially next to Tuipulotu. Love both those, but I think it's got to be Devonta Smith. Like, the number one thing I think this team needed was a separating wide receiver, someone who could make the game easy for Jalen Hurts, and that's Devonta Smith. They move up and give up a third, but look at the value they got throughout the rest of the draft. They were okay minus the third. They still got Milton Williams in the 3rd round. I'm all about this Devonta Smith fit in this Philadelphia offense. I think it's a slam dunk move. Landon Dickerson's a solid player as well. Injury concerns make me a little worried there, and Milton Williams is a super good athlete. Needs to become a more refined player, though. But him and Marlon, though, that could be a nasty, kind of like what the Lions did, doubling up on interior defensive linemen. This is a team that need to get younger on the defensive line. I like what Williams and Marlon could become, but Devonta Smith is my favorite pick for the Eagles. And actually, I have to go back because my favorite team is the Steelers, so staying in alphabetical order. Favorite pick for the Steelers, I got to go Kendrick Green. I wasn't really impressed with a lot of what the Steelers did. Quincy Roche is good value in the 6th, but talking about a rotational guy, maybe somebody who plays more if Highsmith doesn't pan out, but I think he looked pretty good in the small sample size, and he's only going to get better going into year 2, so I don't know how much we see of Roche moving forward. Trey Norwood, it's never really a safe idea to try to find a starting potential corner in the 7th round, unless it's Tay Gowan. That's my exception, which I wanted the Steelers to take in the 6th round. Roche was the pick instead. Isaiah Loudermilk, that's just going to be a future nose tackle. Buddy Johnson's a good player. Dan Moore is solid, a couple of A&M guys, but Freiermuth, I think long-term, future tight end, people have even comped him to Heath Miller. Makes a ton of sense. You see that on tape. I like Freiermuth, but he's just not going to make an impact this year. Najee Harris is a stud. Unbelievable. But I feel like based off the rest of the draft, it didn't help validate taking a running back in the 1st round. Though Kendrick Green will make it easier. Kendrick Green is my pick because he is fantastic as a run blocker. And they're going to play him at center, which if you've been around the channel, you know I'm a huge Marquise Pouncey fan and believer. And he was a Pro Bowler last year, but he shouldn't have been. He honestly, especially by the end of the year, was just not that good. He created no push up front. And, you don't really need centers to do a whole lot when it comes to pass protection, right? Snap the ball, don't get blown up, really. Minimize damage. But in the run game, especially if you go to the playoff, the wild card game against the Browns, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, those short yarded situations where the Steelers needed to pick up first downs, and they have Benny Snell, who is a power back. They just got no push from Marquise Pouncey. Literally, go back, watch the game, watch all the replays. You'll see Marquise Pouncey just could not get that push momentum moving forward. And it's not just him. Dotson needs to be better at left guard. DeCastro, who's also an all-pro guy, needs to be better at right guard. Like, it's a team thing, but Kendrick Green, I think, is going to help improve that interior, inside running game that obviously fits the build for what Najee Harris is. That's a skill set. You don't run outside zones and stretches and sweeps and tosses with Harris, which you can. Not bad to do every once in a while, but this guy's bread and butter is halfback dive. He'll get you 5 yards every time. So I I'll go Kendrick Green with an honorable mention to Najee Harris. Now for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a tough one, obviously, a very small draft class. I like all the picks. I think Trey Brown, he's very different than what Seattle normally wants in a cornerback. I think he's the nickel guy moving forward, but you're still asking him to change his position, which can be challenging. Dwayne Eskridge has some experience playing on the outside, so there's some versatility, though I think he's the slot guy with Lockett and Metcalf on the outside. Really completes that wide receiver room. Stone Forsythe has got to be the pick, and this is the one everybody's going to say for the Seahawks, right? Has the size, has the strength, maybe a little too big, but if he can learn from Dwayne Brown, who's been a consistently very good left tackle in the NFL, if he can learn that technique and not be beat underneath, especially by speedy edge rushers who are just going to try to get underneath and around Forsythe, if he can learn to combat and counter those speed rushers, this is a starting left tackle, franchise level left tackle in the making, and they got him in the 6th round. That's a steal. For San Francisco, I thought about going Ambry Thomas, maybe Trey Sermon. Really, it was Thomas or Lance. I'm going to go Lance, though. Kyle Shanahan went for the upside, and maybe it should have been Fields, right? Like, Fields is who I would have taken, but compared to Mac Jones, Trey Lance was the pick. And also, from what I've heard about this kid and his intelligence, he's only 20 years old, that stands out. And if he's going to be that smart at that age, and he impresses somebody like Kyle Shanahan, who's as smart a football guy as there is, that says a lot about Lance above the shoulders. And then you look at everything else he has. A rocket for an arm, great athletic ability, has the mindset where he wants to run through you when he is the ball carrier. And I think this is an offense that fits him really, really well. Honestly, I think any of these quarterbacks, name a quarterback in this class, any of the top 5, they would have been just fine with Kyle Shanahan drawing up plays. But I like what they could do with Trey Lance and just adding new elements to that offense. So honorable mention to someone like Ambry Thomas, who I think could have a big role very quickly. But Trey Lance has got to be my pick for San Francisco. Next up, the reigning champs, Tampa Bay. I really like this Joe Tryon pick. I know I said it, there wasn't a whole lot of first-round guys. Now I'm going back-to-back first-round picks. But Joe Tryon, I think, found himself in a perfect spot. Has the size, has the makeup of an NFL edge rusher, but opts out of 2020. Feels like somebody who could have been benefited from more reps, and more tape on him. Also has the experience of a hybrid role where he drops back into coverage, so you feel comfortable in that 3-4 outside linebacking spot. And he's not rushed to be an immediate contributor. This is a team that's really good, and they're planning out for the future with someone like Tryon, Trask, and Hainsey. These are all guys who you probably aren't going to see on the field this year. Maybe not even Jalen Darden. He might not make it on the field this year, but Darden could be a Chris Godwin replacement. He could be an upgrade over Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson long-term. Hainsey could be a replacement along the interior, someone to replace maybe Jensen or Ali Marpet, maybe. Who knows? The verdict's still out on what they're going to use Hainsey for, but at the minimum, backup, versatile offensive lineman, have a role for that. And then Trask, you're thinking, is going to be the QB to replace Tom Brady. And then Joe Tryon, my pick here for Tampa, gets to sit behind a year, and he's going to be their JPP replacement next year and have Shaq Barrett opposite him. So he has a role carved out as a rotational guy immediately, so he's going to get on the field, but you're not asking the world of him. And he gets to learn from a couple of guys who have done it at a high level. And then next year, he's going to become a starter, but he's not the guy teams are going to focus on. They're worried about Shaq Barrett on the other side, so I think this is a perfect situation for Joe Tryon to find himself in. 2 picks to go, the Tennessee Titans. I think I really fell in love with this Dylan Radunz pick after I thought about it more and more and more. He was somebody who, throughout the process was like, he could play tackle, he could play guard, and I think he fits really well at right tackle. And I think this helps, get rid of the Isaiah Wilson pick in all of our minds. Rashawn Weaver's great value in the 4th. I'm going to go with Elijah Molden, man. I don't know what they're going to do when it comes to corners. You assume, if healthy, Farley's on the outside with Janoris Jenkins. Does that mean Christian Fulton's playing in the nickel? Or is he just an extra boundary guy? Is he going to be doing a little bit of both? Probably more so that. But Elijah Molden, is he your nickel guy? Is he playing safety? They drafted a couple safeties last year. So I think there's a lot of players with a lot of versatility, and it's going to come down to a really good defensive mind and Mike Vrabel to figure it out. And that's somebody whose judgment I would trust when evaluating defensive players. So Molden, good chess piece, can do a lot of different things. So no matter what, he has a role and he has a fit for that defense. And last but not least, the Washington football team, another team I adored. Their draft class, maybe not at the very end. They took a long snapper in the 6th, But then they bounced back and get Dax Milne, who's like a good wide receiver in the 7th. So this is an A-plus caliber draft, in my opinion. Jamin Davis, really thought about him. Sam Cosmi, definitely a worthy considerate for this, the award, my favorite pick of the draft. Plug and play left tackle with super high upside. Accidentally moved over. Apologies for that. But plug and play tackle, super freak athletic ability. But I got to go to Dyami Brown. Dyami Brown should not have been available at this point in the draft. And I'm as high on Dyami Brown as it feels like anybody else is. At the minimum, an elite athlete who stretches the field and makes it easier for someone like Curtis Samuel to work underneath. Minimum. And then Terry McLaurin does it all. So he's going to get open no matter what the route is and what the concept is. But I love Dyami Brown at the minimum as an elite level field stretcher. Big play waiting to happen. And really at North Carolina, they asked him to run goes and posts. I'd like to think in a room with Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, a great coaching staff, this guy can add a few more routes to his tree. That's why he fell. He doesn't have the most expansive route tree. I feel like you could add a little bit more. But even if he doesn't, maybe you just add the comeback route to it, and he's just running goes, posts, and comebacks. That Tylan Wallace role basically at Oklahoma State. If that's all he does as wide receiver 3 with Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin, this dude's going to have a role. He's going to open up the field for Samuel and McLaurin, and he's going to have big plays coming his way, given he's wide receiver 3, more than likely facing corner 3 on the other team's roster. So I'm all about this Dyami Brown pick. I love this Washington football team draft class, and Brown was certainly a big part of it. That's going to do it for the video. Again, comment down below who your favorite team is and what your favorite pick of theirs was. But also where I was wrong, where I was right. I'd love to hear your thoughts as I give out my favorite pick to each team in the 2021 NFL Draft. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. It would mean the world to me, and it helps me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, like sports, please consider subscribing. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.
Part of the last generation that remembers time of God.